think, the tipping point, the breaking point when my depersonalization started occurring was my sister's suicide attempt. Twice, actually, right? That was on top of everything else. It was extremely traumatic. And after it was done, that's when it all happened. For the next 3 or 4 months, I just went through a horrible, horrible period of derealization. And, and I didn't know what it was at first. I thought I was going crazy. That's the scary thing about it. If you don't know anything about it, you actually think that you're going crazy and you're never going to be back to normal, which causes you to stress even more. So the derealization increases, and so on and so forth. A vicious, vicious, vicious cycle.
Why this world? What do you like about it? Like I ask you that and you just start bending over.
I just picking something up. Oh, why this world? Because it's calm, it's serene. It's beautiful. It's what it is. You just chill here, I suppose. It helps put me at ease. The beautiful sunset, the beach aesthetic,
Yeah, I like the glimmer we got going on up above there.
It's also a pretty beautiful place if you go there. But this is my favorite spot.
What would you like everyone to know you as? So like a name.
Right, you can call me... Well, you can call me Sooka. That's what everybody calls me.
Okay. So, roughly what age?
Yeah.
You could give it age or age range. Roughly, where do you fall?
I'm 24 years old.
Okay. So, where were you born, and where do you live now?
Well, I'm Saudi Arabian, born and raised, never left.
Okay.
And I don't plan on leaving.
Kind of like to know a little bit more about that, because some people, it's hard for them to find what they truly call home. So like, what's behind that when you say I don't plan on leaving?
Well, I mean, we've got a very unique culture here, right? I suppose, I don't know if it's being born into it or just because like I've got a lot of exposure to places outside of my country, right? And of course, I've got a lot of exposure inside of my country. I just feel more at home here. These specific rituals and customs, those little things that we have. I feel like it would be hard to adapt if I were to live, for example, in Germany or the USA, something like that. There are perks, of course. There are perks and cons. But when it comes down to it, I think I would stay here, for the rest of my life.
Oh. It's very, I'd say, like, endearing to hear, because usually people struggle to find what they call home. So, like, I'm glad that you have that in your life. And
yeah, I see a lot of people on VR chat, especially. They're like, everyone wants just to leave. Everybody wants to move. I'm wondering whether they're looking for something like they're not able to find at home, or they're just not content with their current way of living. I'm not sure what it is. For me, I'm pretty happy.
Wow. You are definitely going to be an exception amongst not just the people I've interviewed, but just a lot of people I've met in general. It's hard. It's rare when you find someone who's kind of figured out like what they want and then also achieved it at the same time. You always find most people in between one of the two.
Right.
So when you say people are always moving and they're not very content, I kind of bring that to escapism in a way of like they are struggling to either figure out what they want, deal with their, things in real life. And, that kind of brings us to like why we're doing these videos, because escapism only lasts so long. People will adapt and things will get old to them. And when they sort of run out of options, that's when shit hits the fan and things start to derail. So yeah, I mean, people just are trying to find a distraction. But that being said, since you did say Saudi Arabian, what languages do you know? And then, are there any you're interested in learning?
Well, I know English, of course. I know Arabic, also, of course. And I have been to Japan for a 2-month Japanese course, so I've got a pretty decent amount of Japanese under my belt. But that's pretty much it.
Okay. Yeah. English is seems to be very fluent. Let me know if something doesn't make sense, especially when we talk on very deep conversations like this.
I think I can follow up.
Okay. So it's that time. Gotta ask the tough question, man. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
Okay. What's your favorite color?
Black.
Oh. And why,
Easy.
Why do you
You look at
choose-
my wardrobe, it is entirely composed of black.
Oh. Okay. Is it kind of like a
I think it's
comforting
black
color?
because... No, I think it's because I like subtlety.
Huh.
You know what I mean? I don't like flashy colors and all that kind of stuff. Like, even my avatar is pretty basic. I made it myself, actually. Right? I mean, yeah, to a certain extent. I think almost everything can have things removed from it, and it will be better. Whether it be an avatar, a world, a book, a movie, right? So, a color like black is sort of, I don't know how to explain it. You're not trying to show off with the color. You're not trying to be flashy and look at me, right? But when somebody notices you, they're like, oh, snazzy. That's what I think of it, at least.
I like that answer a lot. It's like it captures the style that you like the most, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay. So, what brings you to be your best self?
What brings me to be my best self? Like my motivations, or could you elaborate?
Just in general, like whether people or things you think about, what brings you to be your best?
Huh. Well, it's kind of hard to say. I just want to experience the most life has to offer. Right, and if I have to be better at this or that, if I have to, do some hard things that'll pay off later, I'm trying to get as much experiences, as varied as possible, you know what I mean? Which is part of why I'm doing things like this interview.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a new opportunity, I'm always yes, by default.
All right.
So, at times, you might need to improve your people skills, you might need to take that training course that opens up that new job, for example, and stuff like that. I always try to better myself. I'm always in the process. Because I think being stagnant is, tantamount to just a slow death.
You capture that with grace, because human beings are built on stimulation, and there are things that captivate us and keep our mind going, and that excite us, whether it be love or intellectual conversations, video games, so on and so forth, that we're kind of we have like a baseline, and then if we stop and we start to fall, it's kind of like it mirrors a withdrawal. So you're right in saying that
we're never satisfied.
Mm-hmm. And like that's also part of like a lot of things with survival, is like we wouldn't be here if we kind of just sat in one place from the beginning. But that's definitely a very interesting take on it. I like that a lot. So moving into the last question before we talk about the problems or the topics. On a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being I lie to myself all the time, 10 being I'm very truthful with myself, where would you fall on the scale?
I would say about an 8. I'm very harsh to myself, I'll be honest. But I think in a sort of constructive way.
Sorry.
I try not to delude myself. I try to, figure out exactly what my weaknesses are, how to solve them, and exactly what my strengths are, and how to utilize them. So I think I'm very honest with myself.
Right. That's kind of similar to how I look at it, in the sense of, if I'm aware of a particular problem or something that can be improved or worked upon, I'll go after it in the ways that I can. But I can't always give myself a 10, because sometimes I either have a bunch of things going on or I'm not aware of it. So it's kind of hard for me to really say 10. But all right.
Yeah, I mean, everybody lies to themselves, right? We cope.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, moving on.
That being said, the floor is yours with problems of the past or the present. What would you like to talk about or start with? Because then I know we briefly talked about it in the Discord call. But take it away.
Yeah. Right. So what I would like to talk about is, I think, the most unique experience, the thing that I can, the thing of value that I can offer is, when I was about 20 or 19 or 20, I went through a severe bout of depersonalization, right? And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, right, it's sort of like going through life, like every waking moment feels like a dream. You don't feel real. You don't feel like you're in control of your body and your movements. Your mother, your best friend comes by, and you look at them and it's them, but it's almost like they're just a robot, an automaton, not a real human being, right? You walk from one room to the next, and it sort of feels like you were never in that first room in the first place. Like those memories were implanted, they were never real. And then you look around the room, the walls, they don't seem real. It's like a dream, 24/7, and it is by far the most horrifying thing that I've ever been through. By far, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I later learned, at least through my limited knowledge, I'm not exactly a mental health expert, that depersonalization or derealization, those kind of go hand in hand, is a sort of defense mechanism against strong trauma, right? So when you experience heavy trauma or a prolonged period of just stress and anxiety and troubles and problems, your brain kind of pulls back, pulls away. It kind of retreats into itself, sort of, and kind of numbs all the emotions and tricks itself into thinking the world isn't real, to sort of try to lessen the effect of that trauma on your mental health. This is normal. People go through it in panic attacks all the time, right? Even these days, when I get the sort of rare panic attack, I get a derealization period. But as soon as the attack is over, it stops. I use some grounding exercises and all that stuff, and the world feels real again. But I suppose when I was a kid, I've been through so much that the brain just retreated into itself and refused to come back out. Right. So
I'd have to definitely potentially prod right here, if you're comfortable with it. You said...
Please prod. Like I said, I'm not good at giving details.
So you said you had a whole ton of things that happened to you when you were a kid.
Yeah.
What and as much as you feel comfortable saying, what does that look like? What happened?
Well, basically it started when I was about 14 years old, right? My dad was cheating on my mom, right? And they got a messy divorce, right? So, as a kid, right, when your parents are fighting, you feel really helpless. You don't feel like you're in control. You're trying to fix things. You want your family to stay together, and this went on, this messy divorce, believe it or not, went on for about 6 or 7 years, because of custody over kids and alimony and all that kind of stuff. And it was just constant problems and problems and problems. Like, they would do just horrible, horrible things to each other. They would falsify documents. They would ask us to pick sides. They would, take us and move us somewhere else and not tell the other person where we were. It was very, very hectic. It was an absolute storm for 5 or 6 years, and it just wouldn't let up. And the thing that got me the most, the thing I believe being a major cause of my anxiety today, is it was so sudden, right? You would spend 3 or 4 days completely normal, and then one day you just hear screaming and shit's going down. Just all of a sudden, without any prior warning. And this was how it was for 5 or 6 years. So as a result, I could never really rest at ease, because I knew a catastrophe was heading right around the corner. You know what I mean? So for 5 or 6 years, that was really prolonged. And in that whole period, I never really felt like I could relax at any time at all. And being the oldest brother of 5, being only 15 to 19 or something at the time, it all just fell on my shoulders to try and fix these problems, to try and protect my brothers and sisters, to try and lessen the damages. And there were so much secrets and things I couldn't say. All those responsibilities were on my shoulder. I didn't have anybody to look up to ask for advice, to just cover me for one day that I can just relax and take a rest. Felt like I was holding a million strings in my hands, and if I let one of them go, if I just accidentally let one of them go, a catastrophe would happen. There was so much responsibility, so much stress, and this continued on for 5 or 6 years, like I said. And I think, the tipping point, the breaking point, when my depersonalization started occurring was my sister's suicide attempt. Twice, actually, right? That was on top of everything else. It was extremely traumatic. And after it was done, that's when it all happened. For the next 3 or 4 months, I just went through a horrible, horrible period of derealization. And I didn't know what it was at first. I thought I was going crazy. That's the scary thing about it. If you don't know anything about it, you actually think that you're going crazy and you're never going to be back to normal, which causes you to stress even more. So the derealization increases, and so on and so forth. A vicious, vicious, vicious cycle. So that's pretty much what caused it in the first place.
So what I'm kind of getting from that is, when all this started, on top of any other stress that you may have been dealing with kind of growing up and being new to the world and other responsibilities that you had, a lot of that, you had comfort in being able to have some control in it. I could study more, or I could do better, I can improve. But with this thing, you didn't have control over it. And it was sort of something that you just had to let happen. And that's extremely stressful. So it sounds like that was kind of building up to a point over time to where, it's kind of hard to vent the steam in a tea kettle of something that's out of your control, because it just keeps happening randomly. You could have the 3 days go by and then boom, just happens out of nowhere. And then when you have a major event or crisis happen, like your sister, attempting suicide for reasons that, you were talking about with your parents and other personal battles that she's going through. You again, that kind of sounds like it's adding to that helplessness, because, mental health is a very tricky field to be in, and being only in your teens, how the hell could you possibly be equipped for something like that? And god damn it, I don't want to lose someone else in my life, with all that's going on. So it sounds like that was absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It was an absolute storm. An absolute storm. Like, I had to worry about my brothers and my sisters. I had to worry about my mother. I didn't really worry about my dad. He could fend for himself. Like I said, it's not really it is the helplessness, sort of, but I feel like also the fact that I did have some control, but not in the fact that I can change things, and the sort of fact that if I mess up just once, boom, shit hits the fan. So that's the bad kind of control.
Yeah, because it sounds like it's almost like perfectionism or forced perfectionism, to where you already have so much of this tension going on with your parents that, like, I'll be damned if I possibly ever add anything to that. So like I am, I'm basically hearing I'm not allowed to make any mistakes because I don't want to possibly add to that situation at all. And like that's so fucking heavy, man. Like, especially for everything that teens go through with and like, I don't know how the school system works in Saudi Arabia, or like what education you're receiving at the time, but like to have to study and watch after your family and kind of deal with all this, and then also not know how to deal with the emotional aspect of it, that's just beyond rough. And kind of like oh, good.
No, go ahead.
So kind of like what you're talking about, with where it's like the mind's response to kind of giving yourself a break. For 5 or 6 years you never really felt like you could truly relax. Well, the body and the mind is built for survival, so they're like, hey, okay, so we haven't been able to relax for a while. You don't seem to have any control in the situation, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna shut it all down, numb out your emotions, and hopefully within that time you could find or it could buy you enough time for this to end and be away from your parents, or figure out some type of solution. And like, I can personally attest to what it's like to be in this state. It's sort of like nothing really has any particular meaning. Everything is just very blank and meaningless. It's numb. Those are the exact words I said to myself, of like, that is probably the worst hell that I've ever been through, where living in just like a world of like pure black and white. And I remember like Googling like why don't I feel anything? And it's kind of like you said, people who go through such an extreme amount of stress that is just the body's way of protecting yourself. But there's a problem with that in when you aren't experiencing your emotions. And let me know how this resonates with you. When you kind of are forced to care less, or you're sort of numbed out, and things are just very surreal, or you're very depersonalized, derealized, you start to kind of question, why am I here? What's the point? You have very existential thoughts, especially at such a young age.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what did that look like for you?
Definitely. Well, it sort of caused me into a spiral, an existential crisis, thinking about life and death, and whether I'm real, whether what I'm experiencing is even real. Like, am I on a planet called Earth? Am I the person in this body, or am I just an automated bundle of neurons and brains that managed to grow a consciousness, just for survival? And that added to my worries a lot, actually, because I just keep repeating these thoughts in my head, like repeating. I do have obsessive compulsive disorder, by the way, so and not in the sort of organize my pens, but in the sort of obsessive thoughts, the thoughts that just won't go away, sort of way, right? So these things just keep going on and on and on. And the first thing that I do when I wake up, even sometimes to this day, but not to the same extent, right? The first thing I do when I wake up, as soon as I open my eyes, I just have a panic attack.
Oh my god.
Right? Because I just wake up, instantly I remember those concerns or anxieties that I have. My heart starts beating and it won't stop beating, and it was horrible. It was horrible. I mean, to this day, I still sometimes wake up, and for example, I think that I'm late for work or something. You know, something that's not really a catastrophe. It's not really that big of a deal, but my heart just starts pounding and pounding, and I wake up in a fright. You know what I mean? Just because I'm so used to it, I believe. Because I did used to get woken up a lot when I was a kid to screaming or something breaking or somebody kicking in a door or something like that, you know? So any loud sounds when I'm sleeping just causes me to get up and rush in a fright. I'm still kind of conditioned to that. I'm still trying to get rid of it. It has gotten better over the years, but it's still there.
Okay, so here's something that, you know, I can sort of, you know, not trying to do therapy. This is just a topic. It's called classical conditioning. All right, okay. No one sue me. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now that that's out of the way. So it's called classical conditioning, and basically what you described is you were conditioned as a kid to sort of react. You got to know what's happening. You got to know how to defend yourself. You got to know if there's anything that you do have control of. And like, holy shit, for that to happen, you know, almost every morning, every other morning, every 3 days, whatever it may be, and to have that go on for so long, that's basically your brain's way of defending yourself. And it sounds as though, you know, that you've been having a hard time to kind of shut that program down or kind of reprogram it to be like in your current life. And the way that classical conditioning typically works, and it's a little bit bleak or dark to sort of say, is that in any way possible, the best progress that you would make to kind of get into the extinction phase of where you're no longer in that extreme panic attack mode, or very, you know, feeling very anxious, is you got to remove yourself from the original stimuli. So like in the example that you sort of just gave, it's like you maybe have to live alone. You maybe have to live in a place that's really quiet and do that for an extended period of time, so that you don't have any reminders to, you know, send you into that fight or flight mode. And every time you do have a stimuli that kind of, you know, like a loud sound or a banging door or a crash, it kind of like, if you had a progress bar, it's like 60%, well now it's like 55%. So the problem with that is when it usually involves parents, it's very hard for somebody to get into a healthy state of mind if they are still in that unhealthy environment. So now that you're older, you have more freedom to sort of control the elements in your life and make choices to kind of be in the environment that you want to be. You could kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But that is definitely something, especially for 5 to 6 years, that would take a dedicated effort to resolve.
Yeah. It has gotten better over the years. I just want to say that right now everything is fine. The world is peachy. You know, all the troubles sort of have ended, and yeah, I'm starting to build myself back up again. For the past, I want to say about 4 years, right? Like, I was a completely different person, and I'll touch on that later, actually.
Okay. Well, let's see. So like that's that, you know, so that was really good in sort of like describing like what depersonalization is and looks like. So I might sort of touch on of like what helped and what made things worse. And then also I have an interesting question that popped up of what we'll start with that. What was lost because you went into this state?
into the depersonalization state, or, the trauma in general?
Well, so the trauma caused the depersonalization, but if you wanted to touch on both of those, go for it.
Well, the depersonalization itself, thankfully, I don't think has affected me permanently in any way, right? Like, before and after this about 4 or 5 month period, it was hell. It was absolute hell, but I don't think I've suffered any ill effects from it. Now, the trauma itself, that whole period of troubles, I think had severely stunted my emotional and social growth, my self-esteem, my confidence, all that kind of stuff, right? So, as soon as all that has finished, right, we got the green light, all is clear, I'm still graduating college, and I'm getting good grades, I'm getting my life back in order. I noticed that I just didn't have as much confidence, self-esteem. I wasn't as cheerful as all of my peers. You know what I mean? I would be the kid sitting in the corner, just quietly doing his work, and then leaving home immediately, not making any friends. I couldn't make eye contact with anybody for like more than 2 seconds. I would just look away. I was severely stunted. So, one day, I was just hyper aware of this. I'm looking at everybody. They're making friends. They're laughing. They're being assertive, right? To this day, I hate conflict, but I feel like that's understandable. I just despise conflict. So, one day, I just had enough, right? I've had enough. So I was like, I am going to change. I'm going to fix all the damage that has been done, and I'm not going to let my past define me. So, starting at about, I want to say 20 or 21, so just a couple of years ago, a bunch of years ago, I was a completely different person than the man you see right in front of you here. I just went full on actually studying and practicing, social skills, figuring out how to foster my confidence, my self-esteem, figuring out how to talk, right? Because sorry, I couldn't really talk. I would just stutter and say things quickly and try not to bother anybody. I would read books. I would attend online seminars. I actually studied this thing like it was a college course. YouTube videos. I would go online on things like Omegle and VRChat, actually. That's part of the reason I started playing this game, to try and foster those social skills, that confidence, that just being, a regular human being. And I feel like that it has paid dividends. I'm completely different. A lot of people actually call me, confident or charming these days, which I almost can't believe. Honestly. It took about 3 years. It's still a work in progress. I'm still working on untangling those knots. But it has definitely paid dividends to start working on that path and start working on myself.
So it almost sounds like not only a relief, but a bit of a reward to sort of start experiencing what you were kind of missing out on. And
Absolutely.
I get the sense that going through that depersonalization in your study years, I get the sense that you kind of can't really remember much of it. It was a blur. Can't really distinguish one day from another.
Oh yeah. The whole period of depersonalization was just a complete blur. Like, can't remember much of it, honestly. I remember that I used to sleep in the same room as my mother, right, at fucking 19 or 20 years old, just because I was so terrified of existing. I would just sit there and stare at a wall. I would sort of try to snap out of it. I would walk out of the room, go somewhere else, and come back to just try and get a sense of reality, a sense of this place is real. I would touch the walls, but they just wouldn't feel real. And when I come back into the room I was originally in, I would try to remember just walking through the hall and going back, and I was like, it doesn't feel like I did that. It doesn't feel like that sequence of events actually existed. So it just made it worse. So it was all just a complete blur. But I remember how terrifying it was. That's what I remember.
And that sort of brings the statement up of that vicious cycle that you were talking about, where, you know, it is very unhealthy to deal with such a high level of stress to begin with, but you dealt with it for 5 to 6 years. And even when you kind of were thrown into that depersonalization state that gave you a break, you still, you know, ran into a new issue of, you know, existentialism and like, is this real? Like, what does this mean? Do I exist? And then that sort of gives you, you know, more or less like the same stress. It's still a stress source, even though you're in this state. So something I was trying to say earlier was like, would you say that this kind of prolonged the depersonalization state because, you know, you just continue to have more sources of stress?
Oh, definitely. Like, I think it is the entire factor of why it lasted so long was because I was constantly stressing about these existential things. I was constantly stressing that I was going crazy, that I was losing my mind. I was constantly stressing about, what if my life isn't real? What if I'm just hallucinating all of these? What if I'm going to stay like this for my entire life? And that was the main point of stress, of anxiety, right? I truly and honestly believed that I would be like this to the day I die. I truly and honestly believed that because there was no end in sight. I couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel, right? And I couldn't find anyone who even knew what I was talking about, and I was kind of afraid to even talk about it to anyone. I don't think I've told anybody other than my mother. Because I'm really like, they're gonna think I'm crazy and they're gonna lock me up. Right? What do you mean the world isn't real? Of course the world is real. What do you want about? Dream? Alright, off to the psych ward with you. So I just kind of kept it to myself.
Well, I'd like to say that's because their wisdom stat isn't high enough. You need a natural 18 to understand what severe trauma and stress sort of teaches you in life. But yeah, I mean, like, I could definitely attest to what it's like, because like I went through the same thing in my own way. It's sort of like my situation, or parallel you could say, is that you grew up kind of being very alone and having to figure out things, you know, just completely by yourself. And like I also had like the same kind of life to where I didn't really actually feel like I had a family, and they were very neglectful. So, you know, come into the world of the world that exists today, and kind of having to learn and figure everything out, and then also join the military is very stressful. And there never really was a break because I never felt like I had a place to rest or to seek help. Like, yeah, there was the internet, or maybe, you know, friends or acquaintances you meet along the way, but if you don't feel like they're truly listening or that they truly care, you never get that sense of calm or rest, or that you could just take a break. Because even if they're trying to give you help, you kind of know deep down that, like, I still got to figure this out for myself, because they're just sort of giving sympathy and superficial help. So, you know,
they can never truly understand it unless they actually go through it. Like, I truly believe no one will ever come close to understanding this unless they go through it. It is such a unique, horrifying experience that, like, we try to describe it as accurately as we can, but nobody will ever truly understand what it feels like unless they've been through it.
Yeah. And
so you do got to figure it out for yourself.
It is an unfortunate thing of society and the human experience that experiential learning is sometimes the only way that you can really gain or broaden your horizons and perspective. Though nobody in their right mind would want to experience something like that, it's sort of a hell that you're pushed into, and you can sort of tell the tale once you make it through.
Yeah.
So really, the best we got for that is just imagine an extreme state of numbness for too long, and then as a result, you have existential crisis and you contemplate ending your life. And that sort of brought me to wonder, did you ever get to that low of a point?
Never. But only because I'm absolutely terrified of death as well. You know, the whole existential thing. I've never gotten suicidal tendencies. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't think, like, if I was more accepting of the fact of, the inevitability of death, I probably would have at least contemplated it.
Huh. Wow, that actually just opened up some like, like when you kind of like put some pieces together. Like for me, I guess the reason why that was the closest I ever came to wanting to end my life is when I had I had some vision problems that were giving extreme tension headaches, and like you said, I thought it was gonna be for the rest of my life. How could I possibly live like that in agony each and every day? But on my end, I never had an uncomfortability with death, and whether there was a nothingness before, we're alive right now, and that there'll be a nothingness afterwards. To me, that doesn't bother me, and all I sort of look to is like, well, even if that is the case, I guess we better make the most of while we're conscious, and sort of going through the human experience. So So, what helped with, I guess you could start with the depersonalization or the trauma? What kind of things really helped you stay afloat?
Well, it only started getting better, right? At the kind of the tail end of those 4 or 5 months. Actually, I remember one specific situation, right? I was lying there in a room, the TV was on. I was depersonalizing, I was ruminating, my head was just a storm brewing, and I caught a glimpse of a movie. Right? I just sort of absent-mindedly paid attention to it. So I kept watching, and I kept watching, and I kept watching. And halfway through the movie, I was just actually watching this movie. I sort of felt, the tightness of the chest, the heart palpitations, the sort of suffocating anxiety start to just well down just a little bit. Of course, as soon as I noticed that, it just went right back up, right? But that was the first relief that I've ever had in those 4 or 5 months, because my mind was occupied with that movie. So I had this thought that if I take my mind off of it, if I just don't think about it, if I sort of accept it, wave to it, and then turn away, that it would start to diminish. And I was absolutely right. I started forcing myself to engage in the activities that I used to like, gaming or watching movies or going out with friends and stuff like that. And as soon as that thought pops into my head, right, I failed more than I succeeded, but I tried to not fight it, not give it attention, not feed it. I would just acknowledge it and then move on. And slowly over the course of maybe a month or 2, I just kept trying to do that. And, try to just let it sit there, not feed it. And slowly, very slowly, it just started diminishing and diminishing and diminishing. It had flare-ups, of course. It wasn't just a straight slope. It was like... But 2 or 3 months later, I was okay again. And I couldn't believe it. I was okay again. It was that easy. Just distract yourself. Don't think about it. Accept it.
I would love to just sort of introduce this analogy so we got a perfect scenery for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask you a question that I know you know the answer to, but if peace required still water, how do you get still water?
Well, you leave it be.
And amidst you going through these issues, let's say you're sitting in the water. What do you feel like you were doing that was interrupting the water from being still?
Well, I would see that the water was wavy and a little chaotic, and I would try to put it back into place. I would just try to do it, but it's impossible. It's it's an ocean. You can't do that. So I was just kind of making it worse. That is a perfect analogy, actually. But as soon as I just let go, let it be, slowly, very slowly, the water turned back to normal. That is a very good analogy.
Hear that, everybody? You can't get still water by splashing all over the place.
Exactly.
Okay. So it's definitely a beautiful example of the things that made it better. So sort of acknowledging it, accepting it, and having the ability to move on. On the flip side, though, I mean, you've also mentioned it, but what made things worse?
What made things worse? What made things worse was definitely all these, these catastrophizing thoughts. These thoughts that produce anxiety. I'm gonna be like this for the rest of my life. I'm going crazy. The world isn't real. All these kinds of thoughts, you just keep cycling, right? They increase the depersonalization, like we said, and then increases the anxiety, so on and so forth. And I think not really having a sort of guide, somebody who could tell me things are going to be okay, somebody I could believe when they tell me things are going to be okay. I did go to a psychiatrist, but he was like, I don't know, I think he gave me some SSRIs, and he was like, all right, on you go. You're just depressed. Like he did. I think he knew what he was doing. So I was like, even a psychiatrist, a mental health professional, thinks I'm talking nonsense. I am going crazy, right? If he had told me when I was going through that it's normal, that it's a defense mechanism, that eventually things will go back to normal given proper care, I think that period would have lasted much, much shorter. So if anybody watching this video is going through depersonalization, it's unlikely, but or if you know anybody who's going through the same thing, just like I said, just know that it will get better. Know that it is a thing. You're not going crazy. It's a defense mechanism. It's completely normal. And you will be back to normal eventually. So just calm down, relax, distract yourself, and you'll be fine.
It's like a silent beast that you're stuck on the back of, and you just have to hold on for literal dear life.
Mm-hmm.
So
it is a beast, all right. I don't really have any regrets. I'll be honest. Like, I wish I wouldn't have gone through what I've gone through, but I mean, to sort of go off on a tangent here, there is a silver lining to it, right? I think that whole experience has taught me humility, has taught me a lot of empathy and kindness towards fellow human beings, because when you've been down that low, right, you sort of grow a lot of empathy for people. I mean, I don't know how kind I was when I was a kid, but today I try my best to help everyone out, and I'm very humble. I don't think I'm better than anybody. That's also because, I've seen rock bottom. So, there's that silver lining, I suppose. It has made me tougher also. Today, whenever there's troubles going on, of course I got my anxiety and I got all that kind of stuff, but whenever something comes up, right, even a catastrophe, right? It's a car crash with a family member or something. I am extremely calm. Extremely calm. I walk in there and I just start working. I don't panic. I never panic. Right? I believe that that's also a skill that I acquired through those years of hardship. So there's always a silver lining, you know what I mean? But yeah, based on bad decisions and good decisions, I don't think I've made any large decisions that I regret.
You know, it's sort of like a question I like to ask people, because it is both an honest and a trick question at the exact same time. You know, even if you feel as though you do make a bad decision, there's still value to be gained from learning from failure. Failure is often regarded as the best teacher, whereas success is a poor teacher. If you never fail, you very rarely enter a state of introspection where you reflect on, you know, what went wrong, what could be better. And even if you really try to train yourself to do that, nothing stings more than truly failing and getting rejected and experiencing, you know, the sting from that. So I think you
definitely
highlighted a very beautiful point, that it's an important skill to look for the good in the bad, because if you've already gone through it, might as well get something from it.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that confidence piece, and you know, it's funny that you say that it's we're actually we have a lot of relatable things going on. It's funny that you say that you don't really like feel like you're confident or charming or you know, and it's sort of taken a while for that to sink in, because you used to be the quiet kid who sort of, you know, was just separate from everything else, and then now you've accelerated so much in growth in those different areas that now you're kind of regarded as someone who's very very capable, you know, of those things, and personable and likable. But like, you didn't get that way overnight. So in this
absolutely
in this journey to confidence within yourself, where do we start there? You know, what are the steps to kind of getting to where you are today look like?
Well, on that topic, I think that the best advice I can give, right, is your brain always believes what you tell it. If you just keep telling it over and over and over, it will eventually believe it. Right? That's sort of how I molded myself into what I am today. Right? So I would just, for example, I'm at a party. Right? Before I even walk in the door, I would keep telling myself over and over and over, you are confident, you are charismatic, everybody likes you, everybody wants to be friends with you, right? And I would go in and I would truly try to put those in my mind, and somehow, you know, my behaviors, my personality would change. I wasn't faking it. It didn't feel like I was faking it, because I truly believed those things. Right? And the more I did it, the more it became second nature. I still give myself a pep talk, you know, before anything important happens, a important meeting, talking to a boss.
Oh, that's hot.
I'm so sorry. You don't really expect any interruptions at 4 a.m.
You were talking about like walking into like a party, for example, and just sort of like reprogramming your brain to the point of where, you know, and the way I sort of heard that is like you gave yourself positive affirmations of like, you know, I'm kind, I'm charismatic, I'm likable, you know, people want to be my friend, and like you would say that repeatedly to the point of like where you believed it, and like it didn't necessarily feel fake because after doing it for so long, it
Yeah.
became you, and then you started living that experience. So what happened from there?
Yeah, exactly. So this is basically what I kept doing for years, actually, that I'm still doing to this day, right? And I believe it has sort of molded my brain to be what I wanted it to be in the first place, and maybe sort of even exceeded the average Joe. I've built up, for example, my people reading skills, right? I would look at people and try to guess what they're thinking, how they're feeling, their little movements, everything they do. I've gotten pretty good at that as well. And so when you know what somebody's feeling, it's easy to make them feel good. It's easy to understand them. It's easy to console them. What else?
What kind of struggles did you encounter?
And
oh, good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a thing that I like to do is, like, every time somebody does anything to me at all, I take note of that, whether it makes me feel good or feel bad. Right? That was a very useful sort of learning technique. So I would write that down. This person, for example, moved over to give me more space. That made me feel good. That made me feel appreciated. I would write that down, why it made me feel that way, and what exactly happened, and I would just commit that to memory. So that sort of thing has made me very, how do I say this? Very considerate to people. I know how to make people feel good and not make people feel bad. Go ahead.
Well, that's very impressive because that is sort of known as emotional attunement, and it's a very under-taught and appreciated skill, like, amongst humanity. Because when you, like you said, when you know what people are feeling, you sort of know how to respond accordingly. Well, how do you do that? You learn how to read, people's nonverbals, their face, their posture. You listen to the tone of their voice, and also see through the lines of what they're saying. And it sounds like that's a skill that has served you very well, and definitely should be taught more to people. The question that I had earlier was, what struggles did you run into along the way that sort of made that made the ground a little bit more rocky, and then like how you kind of got through that?
I definitely felt fake at a lot of times, right? I was seeing this person that I was becoming, and I was like, this is not the person I was for the past 20 years, right? So I was concerned that I was just learning how to be a really good actor and not an actual genuine human being who developed these skills and sort of let them emerge, right? But the way I see it now is people are very, very, very malleable, especially at a young age like myself. I'm only 24 years old, 20 at the time. So I was kept feeling like I'm tricking these people into liking me. I'm pulling the thread over their eyes, making them think I'm some competent leader or all these kinds of stuff. And that definitely had me thinking. It concerned me. But I guess I just dealt with it, right? I just dealt with, hey, this is the new me. I can change. I can become a different sort of person than I was.
The thing that was kind of like surging through my mind and it kind of took me away from consciousness for a second is like the experience of kind of like faking it till you make it, and how it's that seems to be the stage of transition that I haven't really heard people talk about too much. And another way of describing it is like the fifth season, the season of transition. So sort of like in between like summer and winter, the in between. So you kind of described not really, necessarily feeling authentic, but here's the thing: there's a problem with you feeling authentically insecure, and that's not who you want it to be. So you kind of had to really be diligent about with the positive affirmations of like, this is who I am now, got to get used to it. It may not feel authentic now, but like over time it eventually is sinking in to be the new you. And like that's still going on today, because even when people tell you that you're confident, charismatic, and charming, you're sort of like, that doesn't like, it's harder to take.
Still doesn't feel real.
Yeah, it doesn't feel real.
Yeah, exactly. So I sort of thought about it as not adding something to myself, but sort of letting my real personality emerge from within myself, right? Like it's almost in a shell, right? Due to all the things that I've been through. And I'm just helping it, cracking the shell piece by piece and letting it emerge gracefully. That's what I kept thinking of it in that way, and that really helped.
Did you have or meet any people or things that were sort of pieces of resistance, so that sort of pushed you back from kind of becoming that person that you want to be, the person that you feel that you were all along? Did you encounter any resistance besides, fake it till you make it?
Well, a lot of my friends and family, actually, though I love them all dearly, and I appreciate them with every fiber of my being, but they would say things like, they would kind of not discourage me, but sort of go like, what are you doing? What are you trying to be? Right? This isn't you. They wouldn't say that literally, but they would kind of do that with their eyes or with their poses. You can kind of tell when, like, they're almost saying, why are you acting? Right? This is not you. And I didn't really take it to heart. Honestly, I mean, it did hurt a little bit. It did kind of set me back on that progress that, hey, maybe I am just acting, maybe this isn't me. But I think it's sort of natural to just kind of be confused that, what is this new behavior that this person is exhibiting? What is he trying to do?
Exactly.
Is he trying to be deceptive? Right? So I don't really hold it against him, but it was a sort of obstacle in my goals.
I think that's a very important thing to sort of touch on, because whether you decide to distance yourself from friends like that, family like that, there is an innate uncomfortability with knowing somebody being in a particular place for so long and then leaving and then growing and then elevating, and then there may be a potential fear of, is this person gonna go? And some people have a natural response to kind of push you back down so that you don't leave, or so that they don't feel insecure about them not elevating and growing and kind of being authentic for who they really are. There's another side of it where people may be concerned, as you mentioned, because like, oh, like you have a baseline of how you are, and like, oh wow, this is really different. Is something wrong? So it actually may be coming from a place of concern. It may be coming from a place of insecurity. Like we don't know. And a lot of people who sort of realize that they are so much happier in growing and elevating and being authentic, will start to understand that they may have to let go of certain relationships that aren't encouraging their growth and instead are trying to push them back down.
Yeah, I don't think they were doing it on purpose, or they were trying to actually actively discourage me, but it's just this sort of bewilderment, right? That like there's something wrong, that they're just kind of subconsciously exhibiting. I don't think they were actively doing that, so I don't hold it against them, and I didn't pay it any mind when I noticed it. But I just let it be and continued on my merry way. And also another thing I would like to touch on is every time I try to do those things, right, I would try a new thing and I would fail, right? For example, say I would force myself to walk up to a random person and just strike up a conversation, and it just turns out to be extremely awkward. That is very discouraging. Very discouraging. Your brain keeps telling you like, oh, your true roots have shown. This is who you are. What are you trying to be? Right? But, again, you just not have to listen to that voice. Accept that, failure is part of the process. And just try to learn from that experience whatever you can. Oh, maybe he was tense because I approached him from the back or something, right? Those little things like that. I mean, a lot of social contact really, really depends on those very, very minor details that could entirely change the outcome of any social interaction. The way your body is placed, where you approach from, the tone of your voice, all these little kinds of things. So you sort of hone these things little by little, mistake by mistake, I should say.
When I hear that, sort of some examples I could give, or just sort of like, a caveat that I could add on to that is like, yeah, if you do walk into a room and you sort of notice that, someone is maybe stressed out or tired and is sort of like very, very loose in how they kind of talk to, whoever it is, it doesn't always mean that it's you, and you have to be very mindful of, what they're going through, because they may be preoccupied, they may just be tired, it just has nothing to do with you. And if you know that, you can sort of
definitely
you can adjust to where they're at. So if somebody's tired, for instance, like you're not going to want to talk about anything that's particularly draining. In fact, you might want to just keep it light and maybe even, just be a little bit more playful and humorous. And if you notice someone is particularly like serious, you might want to help them vent whatever it is that they're super focused on, or maybe kind of try to chip into a potential solution, or add on to that train of thought, because if you can free up what's bothering them, then they're more open to being able to talk to you like you originally intended.
Definitely. And that's where reading people really comes in handy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A lot of people, I mean, most people actually won't actually tell you what they're thinking. Yep. So being able to read if somebody is annoyed, frustrated, sad, happy, all these little kinds of things, it really helps, right? Because a lot of people even, like, they say one thing, but they mean another thing entirely. Like, somebody might just walk up to you, say hey, and maybe sit next to you and look all slumped down and stuff like that. He's like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, good, how are you? And he's like, all right, I'm fine. Right? But you can tell that there is something on his mind. There is something troubling him. And he's like, if you read between the lines, he's like, I need help. I need support. I need you to listen to me. Right? And a lot of people might miss that. So if you're the one who would actually read that, listen to the man, help him, like, of course, it's a good deed in and of itself. But it also will help you get more popular, more confident, feel like you're having an impact on people's lives in a good way, which is always good, right?
Mm-hmm. There's so much stress going on in the world that people feel as though that they can't really grip a solid reason to care, because caring takes a lot of strength, it takes a lot of energy and fortitude, and some people, for the sake of even surviving, they just have to let it go, and that's very unfortunate, because as we talked about, when you're so stressed out that you have to let go, you run the risk of entering that that numbed out state, and then you'll start to question why things matter anymore, because if you don't care, that's basically like choosing to not care about life, and if you don't care about life, what's the point of living? And then suicidal thoughts will come in. So it's very dangerous.
Very dangerous. And like I said, the brain will believe whatever you feed it. So of course it's It's not as easy as like, oh, just be happy, right? But sort of reframing reality, reframing your feelings about yourself and about others, and just kind of constantly affirming yourself and choosing to look at things in a certain way can really help, can help tremendously.
You could get addicted to a certain type of sadness and anger. You can really get addicted to a lot of negative emotions, because actually negativity or negative emotions are the most stimulating, and that it's sort of like a beyond a double-edged sword, because like while it may be stimulating and somewhat rewarding to you on a certain level, it'll do so much more damage in the long run, because those who are consistently angry and consistently sad, they'll be stressed out for a prolonged period of time, and you guessed it, we're gonna enter that numb state again. So it's why I would never encourage,
especially some of those negative emotions, right? Sometimes they remove responsibility from yourself, right? When you keep telling yourself the world is shit, right? These people are just, they're mean people, they're not good people, that's why they're doing the things that they're doing, right? And you're removing the responsibility from yourself and your own actions, and you're placing it upon them. I am like this because the world is like this. And that is, like you said, sort of an addictive thought, sort of a comforting thought, but it will do a lot more damage in the long run than the temporary comfort it'll give you. My biggest problem right now, I mean, I'll be honest, nothing really seems like a problem at all anymore after what I've been through. Like, nothing comes to mind to be like, oh, if I just didn't have this in my life. I'm very grateful for life in general right now, but I'm racking my brain here.
Well, did you mention, well, sleep would probably be one of them. It sounds like you kind of have a bit of
yeah, I suppose, yeah, I do have a lot of lingering anxiety. Those thoughts keep creeping up into my head. Like, I have disproportionate reactions to small, minor things. Like I said, in catastrophes and, huge events and all that kind of stuff, I'm perfectly calm.
That's interesting.
But, yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? But when something small happens, like, say, for example, my boss tells me to do something, and I forget to do it, and he calls me the next day saying, hey, why didn't you do this? And I'm like, oh, shit, sorry, all right, I'll do it right now. My mind keeps spinning. My reputation is now ruined forever. I have proven myself incompetent, and nobody will ever want to work with me again. Those things like that. And it just keeps repeating in my head over and over and over until I kind of actively put a stop to it. And that might take hours. Little things like if somebody responds an hour late to a text or something, I'd be like, oh, I'm bothering them, I shouldn't text them anymore. Like, these sort of little anxieties in life, they still haunt me, and I'm working on them. But yeah, that's pretty much my main issue right now, I suppose, with my life. But as always, I'm working on it and I'm making it better.
So when I said it's interesting, you basically just said in catastrophes, which it sounds like you got a lot of experience there, you know how to truly snap into a state of rationale and resilience. However, on minor things, you're sort of wired to catastrophize and react disproportionately to the situation, because with classical conditioning, as we mentioned, you've been trained to react disproportionately to anything that pattern matches with things you've experienced before. So if perfectionism, needing to make sure that you hold on to all the strings and like you can't let go. And it sounds like, you know, that event was like a string that was being let go, and you kind of start to have these vigorous black and white thoughts that you have to be like, wait, no, it's okay, I'm allowed to make mistakes. You're finding the gray, you're finding the evidence of like, no, I'm actually not a shit worker, I'm not a bad person, this is fine. And you're right, it is going to take a while to sort of undo that, because you were in that state of thinking and being for so long. And also touching on the point of people seeking immediate comfort with like the world is shit and like a lot of pessimism, nihilistic, cynicism type thinking. Yes, you can seek immediate comfort in saying those types of things, but you know, obviously in the long run, you're truly going to suffer, and like you're really just going to put yourself on a ticking time bomb of when the stress is too much, or you know, you sink to such a low point that wherever you are in life, it's going to be that much harder to sort of, you know, claw your way out of that situation. So I wanted to kind of highlight that there is a very significant reason to be putting in this emotional work, because, you know, as Sooka has explained, you know, he went from, you know, the most horrifying depersonalization experience of his life into, you know, slowly being on like a peaceful downhill slope to, you know, not having as much problems, being more confident, and kind of bringing himself to where he wants to be in his life. And like that didn't happen overnight. Yes, it can be a long journey, but, you know, would you say it's worth it?
Absolutely. Yeah, for the first time, I'm happy and content with life. I'm just chilling. And I would not be, if I had not made that decision to better myself and to try to, I don't want to say fix myself, because I wasn't broken. I was just temporarily inconvenienced. I want to say temporarily, you know, suppressed. And if I hadn't gone on that long but worthwhile journey, I would not be nearly as happy with life as I am right now.
+1. I don't know how to... Wait. Yeah, it's kind of good. +1.
Yeah.
That's exactly my my line of thinking when it comes to having gone through like the same type of emotional journey in my own way, is that, yeah, it definitely took some years, but dear Lord, does it pay off when, you know, I can wake up each and every day, not have anxiety, not have depression, be content and even happy and elated with, you know, things going on in my life. And then also, you know, have, for me personally, a sense of duty and fulfillment in, you know, doing what we're doing now. So if there'd be like anything else to touch upon, I would sort of be curious to talk about that with you, just because of your intellectual capabilities of what does purpose, meaning, and fulfillment look like to you, and like, have you found it? Has it come and gone? You know, what do you feel like your duty to the world is? Just really sort of talk about that.
My purpose, and my duty to the world.
Or your dharma.
Well, I mean, you know, I'm just one of 7 other billion humans, right? My reach is very limited. I'm middle class. I'm not particularly gifted. I'm not a prodigy in any particular subjects or skills. I suppose my purpose is to make the ones I care about most, and ones even that I don't know, but I still care about, random humans, any humans at all, you know, give them the most happiness, try to help out as much as I can. And bettering myself is a sort of way to achieve that as well, because it gives me more power, more capabilities to do that. I try to help out as much as I can. If I see anybody, especially here in VR chat, right, you meet a lot of troubled people.
Yeah.
So I always try to walk up to them, you know, if they're receptive, and just hear them out, give them advice. Just do the best I can to leave the most positive impact I can. To humans specifically.
Oh, but fuck animals though. That's right. That's right. Sooka's an animal feeder. Just, you know, shut the fuck up, little pappy. Like, you know.
Yeah, just slap around puppies all day. That's what I do.
Yeah, and you put kittens in microwaves, and then you throw those microwaves into the river. God, you monster! Just humans. Just humans.
We all have our vices.
God damn. Well, see, like, I really like that a lot, and as much as people sort of know me for having a passion to, you know, want to help humanity, step out of the emotional dark ages, to really help turn things around and talking about this, I also kind of side with that a lot, in that, you know, you don't have to be an extraordinary person. You don't have to do extraordinary things to be an extraordinary person. You know, you can really just take care of yourself and the people around you, and be, you know, perfectly content with that. Your duty is sort of to, you know, be there for yourself and others, and, you know, you don't have to be overly ambitious or make the most money or, you know, have the most friends. You know, because a lot of those people aren't as the surface or the veneer of what you see in their life isn't always what it seems, and you see that a lot with social media and whatnot. You know, it seems like all is great, but on the inside, you know, they tend to crave deeper connections and maybe hang out with less people who truly care about them. And it's perfectly okay to just be selfish and content with very little. It's perfectly okay. There are many problems in the world that definitely need some help, and that's where, you know, your duty could be to rise up and try to contribute to the solution of that problem. That is something that we definitely need, you know, more of, and that can be in things of sort of being there for people, as you said, so that their faith in humanity remains intact. Because what we find with people who lose faith in humanity is they stop caring, and then they start to contemplate why they're even here. And it's becoming a bit of an epidemic. And even just doing something like that, while it might not seem like it's very meaningful and impactful, if everyone starts doing it, then, you know, humanity's going to be in trouble. So just taking care of yourself and the people around you, if everybody did that, you know, the world would be so much more wholesome and fulfilling. So I definitely
and we all got to do our part, at least.
Yeah.
Just to feel like, you know, we're part of the solution and not part of the problem. It brings the person who does it some fulfillment as well, some comfort. So it might, you know, it's not an entirely selfless act. It feels good to know that you've helped people. Well, at least if you have normal human empathy.
Yeah, I do have to touch on this a lot, that if you sort of imagine, like, you know, you have like two plants, you only have so much water for your plant, and in life you could sort of take care of yourself so that you need less water and that you have more to give to others. But if you have a lot of problems going in your life, you require more water, more sustenance, and often people fall into the trap of their problems are so great that they don't have enough water, so they start asking for more from other people. And the problem with that is, well, if you ask, let's say this person can only afford 50 50 units of water, and they need like 40 for themselves, and you're asking for like 60 from them, they can't possibly give that to you. That is something that you have to give yourself. People can only often spare a little bit to other people, especially in the stressful world that we're living in right now. So there was something else that I was
Yeah, I like that analogy. Well, this might be a bit presumptuous of me, but I will say that a lot of people's problems, a lot of them are just, they're fixable. A lot of problems that seem insurmountable, that seem impossible, that seem just stuck like a rock. A lot of them, if you just keep chipping away at them day by day, week by week, working on them actively, a lot of them are very solvable. So don't look for the quick fixes. Take a good long look at yourself and your surroundings. Take note of what you don't like. And start figuring out why it's the way it is. How it happened, that's important to know. And start thinking up of a plan to fix it, and then go to work. It won't be overnight, it won't be a quick fix, but with concentrated and dedicated effort, over time, you'll be okay. It is a bit presumptuous, of course. I mean, I don't know people's problems, I don't know what they're going through, but that's just my impression.
And I'd say I would 100% agree with that, and you definitely have a very well-formulated perspective, or like definitely a good take on that. For almost any problem, trauma, mental health issue that someone may be experiencing, there's almost always something that you can do, all the way down to examples of people who endured, who were part of the Holocaust and the insurmountable pain that they went through. They had the option to scream when they wanted to, even if it is just that one little choice. It is the one thing that they could do that would give back to their will to live, or their quality of life. So while that isn't necessarily the extreme that all people are going through, I like how you highlighted the whys and how you got there, because if you don't understand how you got there, it's likely that you might continuously repeat the same mistakes and kind of get back to where you were in the first place. So there's always some small thing that you can do daily. For me, honestly, the thing that truly transformed my life was just pretty much electronic journaling in a way. I started opening up Google Docs and just typing down what I'm thinking and my ideas, and copying notes and things over to formulate new connections and things that I was thinking. And that started a few years ago, and now I think I'm up to about 2,500 or maybe 3,000 pages of just typing things out or adding notes or whatever it may be. And the person I was 2 years ago, there's such an enormous gap between who I was then and who I am now. And it was all because I decided to just start doing that one little thing. It wasn't like I did a page every day, it was just a thought here and there. And then sometimes I'd be on a roll, and then sometimes I would find new interests, new things that made me feel happy to be alive, or that would be adding to my goals or taking me to bigger and better things, as far as like what I perceived or what would be most fulfilling to me in my life. Just that one thing each and every day. So I was kind of curious, was there anything like that for you?
Nothing so concrete, I suppose, nothing so specific. But just those affirmations I talked about, those
Yes.
kind of telling your brain how to think, what to do, and enforcing your will against yourself day by day. That's what it was for me.
Right. I was definitely gonna say those. I mean, like, and that's something that everyone can definitely do. Just in the mirror to yourself, say it out loud. There's power in the voice. I want to change. I don't like being here. And some of that can actually provide immediate relief as well. Just acknowledging it. I don't like who I am.
Yeah.
I hate myself. You don't have to. It's good to acknowledge it, but don't stay there. And envision
Exactly.
who you want to be and where you want to be. Say something.
I've got a cool
funny.
graffiti world we can try.
Okay.
Maybe you could just, paint some cool graffiti and end on that.
Yeah. We'll do it. Let's do it.
Right?
Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Yep, this is it. I like to make it all white. It's crazy how realistic these things are. So, how about we write your channel name? Is it Ryan Heels?
Yeah, sure.
Same as it is? Just a shameless plug right there, but it's not shameless because I'm the one doing it. Not just a regular ass. Oh no.
Oh, you're giving
Get
me
the fancy ass today.
Yeah, the super S, the money.
That I sort of forgot how to. How do you? Right, we'll go with that.
Okay, so Rain
Rain Heels. Heels. That is beautiful. A work of art. An absolute work of art. I'll take a picture.
Is there any closing anything that you would like to say before I end the report?
Get lots of sleep and drink lots of water. That really helps. Honestly. Those two things. That's pretty much it. Thank you for holding this interview. It was a wonderful dialogue. Talking about these things sort of gives me a deeper understanding myself. And I enjoyed the experience. I hope you enjoyed it as well, and the viewers enjoyed it as well.
All right. Signing out.
Signing out.